Hello and welcome back to another review. Today I'm reviewing on the actual Christmas day as a bit of a Christmas special, the Amtrak ACS-64 Amfleet I set. This includes the locomotive, the ACS-64, and 4 Amfleet I cars, 3 passenger cars, and a cafe car, I believe, is a cafe car. This comes in one of Kato's bookcase sets. Inside you get a piece of paper telling you all about trip pins and whatnot. There's also a small piece of styrofoam that does absolutely no good right there. And then you get the set itself, consisting of the locomotive, the 3 passenger cars, and the diner car. Food service car is what it said on there. I don't know whether it's a cafe or a diner specifically. So I'm going to set these down and we'll take a look at them. Alright, so this is Kato's latest release. This is the Amtrak ACS-64, built by Siemens. Very new electric locomotive. And the model is equally as new, and it's really, really nice. There are a couple of small problems I have with it, but nothing that would stop me from recommending it, and nothing that stops me from enjoying it. It's really fun to run. It's nice in every single way. So let's get started with the details. Starting on the front, you can see the front of the locomotive, obviously. This is a double-ended locomotive because it's based off of a European design. So while either end can technically be the front, this is the front because it has the little F on the side saying that it's the front. And I'm only going to really show one end just because they're both exactly the same on both sides. So you can see the front windshield. The windshields are really nice looking. Same with the fact that there's windshield wipers on there. There's also the headlight above the window with lit number boards on either side of that. Those are really nicely done, as well as the ditch lights that are down low. The reverse lights, however, are not lit. That would have been really cool if they were, but they're not, and that's not really something you see very often, except for in the Metro locomotives that they did, that Kato did, as well as the MP36s that they also did. And then down on the pilot, there's not a whole lot of detail, and that's one of the places where I would say the detail is really lacking. Also, the coupler sticks out kind of far. I realize that's to be able to make it around probably 9 3/4 inch radius curbs, but it would be nice if they included an option for shorter couplers like they did with the P42s. Alright, now we'll look at the side of the locomotive. Starting on one end, you can see the ACS-64 nameplate as well as the little F showing that this is the front of the locomotive. Then you can see the 621 number right above that. Kato only released one number of this, and the only way you can get the locomotive is by buying the full set. They have the 5-unit set with the locomotive and 4 cars, and then they have two packs of Amfleet I coaches. But there are no single release locomotives as of right now, as of December 25th, 2015. Above the number, you have the backwards United States flag. I'm not really sure why it's backwards on this side. I mean, they could have put it the right way on all of them because it wouldn't be that hard. I don't know if that's how it is on the real one. I've never seen one in real life. And then above the flag there is a window, and then to the left of that you've got some handrails and a door, and then behind that, well, to the left of that, there's a Siemens logo down there in light blue. Looking at the camera, I don't know if you can see that. I will get a different angle of that otherwise. And then there's the vents up at top, and then you have the big Amtrak logo. I at first I thought the large Amtrak logo looked kind of weird on the promotional photos Kato released, but on the model it looks fine, and I wouldn't say it. In fact, it looks perfect. I wouldn't say there's any flaws with the paint job on this locomotive. And then you have below that, going all the way down the locomotive, you've got the red stripe with the gray stripe underneath it. And then we'll look at the bottom of the locomotive. The underframe detail on this locomotive is nothing really special, except when it comes to the trucks. The trucks look really good, and also the detail on the wheels, the little rivets or whatever they are, holes in the wheels, look really good, and it's a really nice touch, especially for, in scale. Wheels are probably the least of people's worries. Normally it's, separately applied detail, but they look really good, and I'm really happy with how Kato handled the wheels on this one. And now back up top you can see some different equipment up on either end right above the cabs, and then in the middle you get to the pantograph equipment, and the horns are in the very middle. The pantograph equipment is painted a very bright red color, as you can probably see. Now I know they're red in real life, but they're not quite that glossy, bright plastic red. That's probably the most unrealistic part of the locomotive, and it's the only thing that I really don't like about it, is that, it doesn't look fair. That part of the locomotive looks like it's a toy in this model, and the rest of it looks really good model. But the bright red pantograph equipment just doesn't look quite right. Now the pantographs do go up and down just fine. They are extremely fragile. You can raise either one and they go up and down pretty easily, but they feel extremely fragile. They're very thin, which is realistic, but it comes at a price of being very, you feel very vulnerable trying to maneuver them, because they bend around a lot and they aren't particularly sturdy. So if you happen to decide to get one of these, just remember, be extremely careful with the pantographs. When you're pulling it out of the box, pull it out either from one of the ends, because you don't want to go from the top, because you'll probably break off one of the pantographs. Alright, now that we've had a look at the locomotive, I'm going to show you one of the coaches and the cafe car, and then we'll put it on the track and run it around and show you how well this engine runs. Give you a bit of a spoiler, it runs really well. The lights look great, the motor is extremely quiet, it has really good slow speed, and it overall runs really well. Alright, so here's one of the Amfleet I coaches. There are 3 included in the set. There's not a whole lot of differences between this and the Amfleet II cars. I will show you some of the differences as we move along, because I have Amfleet IIs here handily. Alright, you have the door with the vestibule there in the middle of one end, and then you've got 2 doors on the end, on the sides as well. You've also got the coupler that's tucked in really nicely. It pulls these cars in pretty close together, but then you can still go around fairly decent curves with it. You also have above that the ribs that go up all the way around, and also some small little notches. I'm not really sure what those are. Small rectangular panels. Just below that there's another little sign, I assume on the real one that's some sort of display saying what train it is or something like that. And then below that you have a sign that says coach class, and then a little handicap sign below that. And then to the left of that you've got the Amtrak logo and the car's running number. And here's a close-up of the signage that's on the side of this coach. This is the end with the Amtrak and the handicap logos, obviously. The other end does not have the Amtrak or handicap logos, but is otherwise exactly the same. And along the side you can see the windows, and then in the very middle there's a tiny little plate with the car's number there as well. Here's a close-up of some of the underside detail. You can see that there's not a ton of it, but there's not really a ton of it on the real one either, and you can also see the little number board that's there in the middle of the car. Here's a close-up of the signage on the food service car. You can see the sign that says food service car that's above the Amtrak logo on either end, except there's not an Amtrak logo on the other end, but it's in the same place. You can also see where it says cafe above the handicap logo, where the other one said coach class, and obviously this end is the one with the Amtrak and handicap logos. There's not one on the other end. And the only other difference between this food service car and the regular coaches is there is an area in the middle of the car where there are no windows because it would be a bar and stuff like that inside. Here you can see some of the slight differences between the Amfleet I, which is on the left, and the Amfleet II, which is on the right. Specifically, there are two doors on either end of the Amfleet I car, which on the Amfleet II there's only doors on one end. There's also a difference between the windows. The Amfleet II has larger windows on the sides of the car as well as on the door, whereas the Amfleet I has smaller windows and a different door design featuring smaller windows. One final comment before we put this on the track. When Kato announced this, they said that the ACS-64 would be speed matched to the P42, so that way you could run it prototypically as it's in transit from an unelectrified area to an electrified piece of track. However, I've found that's not really the case. I have one of the latest release P42s there on the right, one from the starter pack, and they're not at the same speed. The P42 is a lot slower. It doesn't respond to power it doesn't respond to as low of a power setting as the ACS-64 does. Now, the ACS-64 is not extremely fast. It just has a wider range of speed, whereas the P42 doesn't start moving until at a higher power setting. With that said, let's put the ACS-64 on the track along with the coaches that are included with it and give it a run. This is a fantastic set. I would definitely recommend it if you like Amtrak, electric locomotives, or really anything model railroading, especially Engage. This is really nice.